As if anybody cares. So you know how everyone's trying to look really, really skinny and there's this fixation on thinness? I don't see that ending anytime soon. However, when it does, I have two theories on what kind of body trends and standards we're going to see next. Number one, I can foresee the renaissance of old Hollywood glamour coming back, specifically from the 40s and the 50s. And this is due to a lot of celebrities embodying inspiration from that time period of old Hollywood. Think of the hair, the jewelry, the dresses that you would otherwise see on actresses like Grace Kelly, Elizabeth Taylor, Ava Gardner, Marilyn Monroe, Rita Hayworth, Audrey Hepburn. The list goes on and on. Old Hollywood glamour really revered this hourglass silhouette that was curvy, was voluptuous, but they were still proportionate in certain places that the patriarchy would gatekeep. And if you just didn't have that, you know, particular silhouette, that body shape that was acceptable in the hourglass form or maybe like the pear-shaped form, you would not be represented. However, in contrast to the BBL era, you need to look as if you were born with an hourglass figure. It needs to look natural. It needs to look as if that were your genes. And I can foresee that it needs to look natural specifically on white women's bodies. And this is due to the fact that old Hollywood was still incredibly racist. It was heavily discriminatory, and it fully like made mockery of people of color. You know, I don't want to go into depth as to how dark those times were and how people still took unhealthy measures to look the way that they did, even though you would have contrasting messaging on what to do, like whether it was for weight loss or weight gain, you still needed to look as if you were just effortlessly slender but voluptuous in the right places. And you specifically needed to adhere to what was acceptable in the white man's eyes. Now, you may be asking, what if the celebrities in question just really appreciate the fashion in old Hollywood, and what if it's not much deeper than that? Do you know how the trad wife and trad husband movements really romanticized the 50s and the 40s, specifically because it was seemingly very common to have nuclear families and to have more traditional household roles? Like, husbands knew how to be husbands, wives knew how to be wives, everybody was heteronormative, things like that, you know? It's all a little too synchronous with the rise of conservatism in our culture, at least in my humble opinion. I notice that Hollywood, and specifically our entertainment, usually reflects or foreshadows what kind of economic events are going to take place, whether it's a recession, whether it's a boom. And given what we know about thinness being a recession indicator, I can only imagine. Though with the rise of old Hollywood, if it happens, and the rise of conservatism in our culture right now, it's only going to encourage more hatred, discrimination, and prejudice towards marginalized groups, specifically people of color, low-income communities, immigrants, women, queer people, people of other religions, you know? It's not gonna look good. Number two, do you remember how millennial culture made it very trendy to be into health and fitness? And I don't just mean into health and fitness, I mean into health and fitness. You are going through cutting and bulking phases. You are counting your macros. You are trying to be sponsored by Gymshark and Alpha Elite. You are eating Halo Top and Miracle Noodles. You were ensuring that you had dry muscle that was visible from outer space, and you could tan yourself to oblivion so that that would happen. And you would also compete in bikini competitions if you had the time and the money to do so. I can see that happening because I'm not going to go into the depths of the politics behind fitness in the gym because plenty of creators online have already very eloquently explained the whole argument behind this. But the whole goal of this thinness epidemic is to make you too physically frail, weak, and feeble to stand up for yourself, to fight back, and to be an activist for others. They want you to be more impressionable and more compliant when you are in a destitute place and you are so depleted of energy and strength that you cannot move forward. So, using fitness as a way to embolden yourself and to defy that kind of society is going to highlight that you are financially well off and privileged enough to do so. And given that much of millennial culture is having a little bit of a resurrection, specifically the music, the TV shows, the movies, the fashion, the humor, I don't see this being too far-fetched. Not to mention millennial culture heavily glamorized entrepreneurship, hustle culture, girl bossing, working hard, playing hard, It's going to be very interesting. But let's be very frank about a few things. The millennial fitness world still largely hated women, people of color, queer people, and fat people. There were not too many major platforms for people of color and for queer people. And oftentimes the rhetoric in the fitness world was extremely fat phobic in the guise of wanting to give sound health advice and any advice that cared about societal health and well-being without considering other economic disparities that would impact access to gyms, access to good food, access to medicine that would help with fitness goals. You know what I mean? Also, if you were a woman, you still needed to look relatively feminine, but also strong in the right places, if that made sense. So, no matter how muscular, fit, or toned you looked, if you had a flat chest, a flat rear, and body hair, the fitness world, especially the men in the fitness world, still hated you. Also, it was very possible for people to be fat shamed out of the industry and off the internet because they didn't have a visible six pack, or they didn't have a thigh gap, or they were too small in certain places. Not to mention, the gender norms were extremely polarizing in the fitness world. And they were trying to make pick-me-ism cool. And the whole not like other girls, the whole cool girl movement was cool back then in the fitness world. Maybe I'm just shouting out a bunch of random jargon, but at least from my observations, there were many misogynistic people in the fitness world, many racist people in the fitness world, and even more fat-phobic people in the fitness world. But yeah, those are just my thoughts about what is to come next after this thinness epidemic, which I don't see happening not until the next few years or so. But I'm curious if you agree, disagree, or if you have any other ideas on what's to come.